Have you ever wondered why some people talk endlessly about their grand visions yet never take a single step toward making them reality? Welcome to Wisdom Files, where we explore the intersection of ancient truths and modern living. If you find value in these conversations, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community of seekers and thinkers. Now, let's dive into today's topic. I was reading about Solomon's temple the other day, this magnificent structure described in such detail in the Bible. King David had the vision, gathered the materials, but it was his son Solomon who actually built it. It got me wondering about all the King Davids of our world who never find their Solomon, or worse, those who have both the vision and means but remain frozen in inaction. This pattern of dreaming without doing appears across cultures and throughout history. The ancient texts, whether Jewish, Christian, Islamic, or Eastern traditions, all contain wisdom about this very human tendency. Today, we'll explore what's happening in the mind of someone who dreams big but does nothing, and what sacred texts can teach us about overcoming this paralysis. Let's start with what happens when we dream. When we envision something grand, whether it's writing a book, starting a ministry, or building a community center, our brains release dopamine. This is the same neurochemical reward we get when we actually accomplish something. This means just thinking about our goals can give us a satisfaction similar to achieving them. The book of Proverbs warns us about this when it says, "In all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty." The ancient wisdom recognizes how easily we can substitute dreaming for doing. I remember interviewing Rabbi Steinman for this channel last year. He told me, the Torah doesn't just command action, it begins with creation itself, with God speaking and then things happening. We're made in that image, to speak and then do. But why do so many of us get stuck in the speaking part? The most powerful force keeping dreamers from becoming doers is fear, but it rarely shows up wearing that label. Instead, it disguises itself as prudence, as careful planning, as just doing more research. I'm reminded of the parable of the talents. The servant who buried his coin instead of investing it didn't say, "Master, I was afraid." He said, "I knew you were a hard man," presenting his fear as wisdom, as knowledge. Psychologists call this rationalization, when we create seemingly logical reasons to explain behaviors actually driven by emotions we don't want to acknowledge. The early Desert Fathers wrote extensively about aesthesia, a spiritual listlessness that prevents action. St. John Cassian described it as the noonday demon that makes even the smallest task seem impossibly difficult. Modern psychology might call this analysis paralysis or perfectionism, but the observation is the same: we can think ourselves into complete immobility. If you're finding this analysis helpful, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more people searching for this kind of wisdom. There's something profoundly comforting about potential. As long as your dream remains unrealized, it remains perfect. The moment you start acting, you face the messy reality of limitation, failure, and compromise. In Jewish mysticism, there's a concept called klippot, shells or husks that surround and hide the divine light. I think sometimes our unrealized dreams function this way. The perfect, untouchable vision becomes a shell that actually protects us from having to engage with the light of real action. When Moses first encountered God at the burning bush, his response was resistance. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" He preferred the comfort of being a shepherd with the potential to be a deliverer, rather than risking actual deliverance. Here's something fascinating. People who habitually dream without doing often build their identity around being a visionary or idea person. Their self-concept becomes tied to having big plans rather than accomplishments. We see this in religious contexts too. How many of us define our faith by our beliefs rather than our actions? Yet James writes clearly, faith without works is dead. In Islamic tradition, the concept of amal, righteous action, is inseparable from true faith. When we derive our sense of self from our potential rather than our actions, we create a powerful psychological incentive to preserve the dream state and avoid the risk of action. Action creates accountability. Once you begin, you can succeed or fail, and both possibilities can be terrifying. Consider Jonah, who literally tried to sail to the opposite end of the Mediterranean rather than fulfill God's call to preach to Nineveh. The biblical narrative suggests his reluctance wasn't primarily fear of the Ninevites, but fear of what would happen if they repented and God forgave them. He feared being accountable for a message of mercy he wasn't sure he believed in. Dreamers often avoid this accountability by never starting. If you never begin writing that book on biblical archaeology, you never have to face criticism of your interpretation of evidence. If you never start that community outreach program, you never have to explain why it's not growing as fast as you'd hoped. "I'll start when I'm ready" might be the most dangerous phrase in a dreamer's vocabulary. It assumes a state of readiness exists somewhere in the future, when enough knowledge, resources, or confidence has been accumulated. But readiness is largely a myth. The disciples weren't ready when Jesus called them. Moses wasn't ready to confront Pharaoh. Esther wasn't ready to approach the king. The readiness came through the doing, not before it. St. Augustine famously prayed, "Lord, make me chaste, but not yet." His prayer reveals this human tendency to place transformation safely in the future, where it demands nothing of us today. So how do we move from dreaming to doing? Our religious traditions offer profound insights. The Talmud teaches, "You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." This recognition that we begin without seeing the end liberates us from perfectionism. Jesus spoke of faith as small as a mustard seed being enough to move mountains. The emphasis isn't on the size of the beginning but on beginning at all. The Jewish concept of kaizen, continuous improvement through small steps, finds parallels in many spiritual traditions. The Desert Fathers didn't begin with 24-hour prayer vigils, they started with simple, manageable disciplines that grew over time. If these ancient wisdom principles are resonating with you, consider subscribing to Wisdom Files for more explorations of timeless truths and their application in our lives today. The early church functioned as communities of accountability. Paul didn't travel alone but always with companions. The monastic tradition created structures of community specifically to help individuals maintain their commitments. When we make ourselves accountable to others, we create external motivation that can carry us through when internal motivation flags. This might be the most important spiritual insight: failure isn't final. The biblical narrative is full of people who failed repeatedly but remained in the story. Peter denied Christ 3 times but became the rock of the early church. David committed adultery and murder but remained a man after God's own heart. Doers understand that failure is part of the process, not the end of it. The Hasidic Rabbi Nachman of Breslov taught, "If you believe breaking is possible, believe fixing is possible." There's a profound spiritual consequence to perpetual dreaming without action. It creates a kind of duplicity in us, a division between what we say we value and what our actions reveal we actually value. Jesus reserved some of his harshest criticism for those whose words and actions didn't align. He called them hypocrites, literally actors or pretenders. This isn't just about moral failing, It's about the fracturing of the self that occurs when our imagined identity doesn't match our lived reality. The medieval mystic Meister Eckhart wrote, "What a man takes in by contemplation, he must pour out in love." There's a spiritual rhythm of receiving and giving, of contemplating and acting, that keeps us whole. The greatest story in Christian tradition is one of the Word becoming flesh, of divine potential taking concrete form in the world. In many ways, this is the template for all meaningful human action. Our dreams, visions, and ideas must become incarnate to fulfill their purpose. The dreamers who never act are stuck in a perpetual advent, awaiting a birth that never comes because they won't labor to bring it forth. When we look at the great religious figures and movements throughout history, we see people who certainly had grand visions, but who also took stumbling, imperfect first steps toward realizing them. Mother Teresa didn't set out to build a global organization, she simply began by caring for one dying person on the streets of Calcutta. So let me ask you, what dream has God placed in your heart that remains unrealized? What is the small, imperfect first step you could take today? Not next week, not when you feel ready, but today? As the psalmist wrote, "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts." Perhaps the hardening isn't always about disobedience. Sometimes it's about hearing the call to action and responding with endless planning instead of beginning. Let's close with this thought from Augustine: God provides the wind, but man must raise the sail. The divine inspiration may give us the dream, but we must take action to catch that wind and move forward. Thanks for joining me today on Wisdom Files. If you found this helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment about a step you're taking to move from dreaming to doing. Your engagement helps this channel grow and reach others seeking ancient wisdom for modern challenges. Until next time, peace be with you all.